Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking an absolutely incredible journey from the macro level of your entire body straight down into the microscopic. We're going to explore the bustling microscopic metropolis that is human blood. It's this incredibly complex world functioning inside of you right this very second, and I am so excited to break this down for you. Think about that for a second. What if the most advanced emergency response system on Earth is flowing through your veins right now? We honestly take it for granted, don't we? You get a paper cut, you see a drop of red, and a few minutes later, it just stops. But beneath that simple, everyday occurrence is a highly sophisticated, perfectly orchestrated network of cells and chemicals. So let's peel back the layers of this life-saving system and see exactly how the whole shebang works. Section 1. The River of Life. Now, what's really interesting here is looking at blood as more than just some static liquid. It's the vital transit system of the human body, a literal river of life, connecting every single organ and tissue. Let's break down exactly what makes up this river. If you were to take a vial of whole blood and spin it down in a centrifuge, it separates into these really distinct visual layers. The vast majority of it, about 55%, is actually a liquid called plasma. Then you've got your cellular crew. 44% are your red blood cells, and then there's this tiny yet incredibly mighty 1% that makes up your white blood cells and platelets. To put the sheer volume of this fluid highway into perspective, all of this accounts for roughly 7 to 8% of your total body weight. On a macro scale, that translates to about 12 pints running through an average man and around 9 pints in an average woman. That is a massive volume, and it's constantly circulating, actively keeping you alive second by second, heartbeat by heartbeat. Section 2. The cast of characters. Okay. Let's adjust our microscopes and zoom in slightly to meet the actual cellular residents floating around in our bloodstream. First up, we have plasma. Remember, this makes up more than half of your blood. It is the absolutely indispensable transport medium. Basically, it's a liquid mixture that's mostly water, but it is packed to the brim with sugar, fat, protein, and salts. You can think of plasma as a giant conveyor belt. It carries vital nutrients and chemical messengers, like hormones, while simultaneously sweeping away waste products, all to perfectly maintain your body's delicate internal fluid balance. Next up are the erythrocytes, or red blood cells. These are by far the most abundant cells in the blood, and they have this amazing biconcave shape. Basically, they kind of look like a squished donut, where the hole doesn't go all the way through. They are packed full of a special protein called hemoglobin, and they have one single-minded, absolutely crucial mission: to bind to oxygen in your lungs and deliver it out to the rest of your body's tissues. But there is a really fascinating biological trade-off here. 120 days. That's it. See, because red blood cells don't have a nucleus, they're highly flexible, which is great because it allows them to squeeze and fold through the absolute tiniest blood vessels in your body. However, lacking that nucleus means they don't have the cellular machinery to repair themselves. That's the catch. It severely limits their lifespan. So after traveling through your vessels for just about 120 days, they become damaged, deplete their energy, and are ultimately recycled by the body. Then we have the leukocytes, the white blood cells. These are your immune system's frontline defenders, and even though they make up barely 1% of your blood volume, they are absolutely essential. This group includes fast-acting neutrophils, which, by the way, are your body's very first line of defense and actually live for less than a single day, and lymphocytes, which produce targeted antibodies. So yeah, they're rare, but they are fiercely protective against infections. Section 3. Platelets, the first responders. Let's move to and see how this builds, zooming the microscope in even further to introduce the smallest and honestly arguably the most dramatic heroes of our story. Platelets, medically known as thrombocytes, are actually quite strange. Just to be clear here, they aren't even true cells, no way. They are merely tiny 2 to 3 micrometer cytoplasmic fragments. They physically break off from these giant, monstrously large cells in your bone marrow called megakaryocytes right before they enter your circulation. And the scale of their production, it is literally mind-blowing. 100 billion. A healthy adult produces 100 billion of these tiny platelets every single day. The reason your body is pouring so much energy into pumping out these fragments is to maintain a constant, massive state of emergency readiness. Because the second a blood vessel breaks, these first responders trigger a process called hemostasis. It is a rapid, frantic, 3-step biological alarm. Step 1, adhesion. They instantly anchor themselves to the torn vessel wall. Step 2, activation. They sound the chemical alarm, calling for immediate backup. And step 3, aggregation. They build bridges, rapidly clumping together to form a physical plug. It's incredibly fast. And this brilliantly illustrates the change. A resting platelet is small and discoid, looking almost like a smooth, wrinkled little brain. But once that emergency activation hits, it undergoes a violent physical transformation. It rapidly expands octopus-like tentacles, called dendrites, and flattens out into this dense, sticky, fried egg shape. This massively increases its surface area to perfectly cover the microscopic wound. It is just an incredible morphological change. Honestly, it's no wonder that early medical pioneers were absolutely fascinated by these structures. I mean, look at this quote from William Osler back in 1886. Examining blood under rudimentary microscopes, he marveled at what he called a third corpuscle, a colorless protoplasmic disc. He was seeing these bizarre, tiny fragments for the first time and just beginning to unlock the deep mysteries of human clotting. So we know how blood physically plugs a hole and stops us from bleeding out. But what happens to the invisible molecular waste that our cells are constantly leaving behind as they consume oxygen? Let's totally pivot our narrative here. Section 4, the carbon dioxide shuttle. We are now going to zoom all the way down to the absolute microscopic molecular level to uncover a hidden chemical superpower within our blood. Your cells are constantly producing toxic carbon dioxide as a byproduct of keeping you alive, right? And your blood has to shuttle it away to the lungs. It does this through some wonderfully complex biochemistry, which we can basically break down into 3 distinct mechanisms. Only about 10% is simply dissolved directly into the plasma as a gas. Another 10 to 20% chemically binds to proteins, primarily hemoglobin, forming carbamates. But the vast majority of it, a whopping 70 to 90%, is actually absorbed right into the red blood cells, magically converted into bicarbonate, and safely shuttled away. So, the crucial point is how this molecular transit works dynamically in the body. When we look at arterial blood, it carries about 20.66 millimoles per liter of CO2. But venous blood, the stuff heading back to the lungs, carries 22.35 millimoles per liter. Why the sudden increase? Well, it's due to a brilliant biochemical phenomenon called the Haldane effect. When red blood cells drop off their oxygen at your tissues, their chemical structure actually changes. This increases their capacity to pick up and carry that carbon dioxide waste. It is a perfectly balanced molecular exchange. Section 5, blood banking and you. Let's pull our lens all the way back out to the macro level. How does all of this spectacular microscopic biology actually apply to modern medicine, hospitals, and human connection? Well, the harsh reality is storing this biological miracle presents severe logistical challenges. Take our first responders, the platelets. They have a maximum shelf life of just 5 days. 5. Furthermore, you literally cannot refrigerate them. Chilling them ruins their delicate shape and function, so they have to be kept at room temperature under constant agitation. To get enough of them, blood banks have to use a process called apheresis to collect concentrated doses from single donors. Because of these incredibly strict biological limits, continuous daily human blood donations are an absolute ongoing necessity for survival in modern healthcare. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. You now know about the oxygen couriers, the rapidly transforming first responders, and the brilliant molecular shuttles. So knowing the awe-inspiring microscopic metropolis keeping you alive right this very second, will you share a drop of your own to save another? It's a really powerful question to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the bloodstream. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.